there's no better education than getting out and seeing the world.
The experiences are what you're going to remember in the long run. Getting
out to see the world has just really opened my eyes to a lot of things.
I know a little bit about a lot of random things, and that's because of travel.
We're going to be able to learn so much about some really great destinations.
I'm excited about how this will improve our group itineraries.
I'm really looking forward to having great conversations about places. Welcome to Destination Dispatch.
Hello, I'm Jim Delleman with Group Travel Odyssey. Thank you so much for joining us once again today for this special episode of Destination Dispatch. It's special for a couple of reasons. First of all, we're going to be learning about someplace overseas. As well as that, you may notice that this is a different time. It's really kind of early for us. And actually, as we bring on other people, you'll hear about how early it is for some of them. So we are doing a live here at 10 a.m. Eastern time. But we want to give you some more information about some really great places, and some of these places that we're talking about require us to, or makes more sense for us to do these at different times. So before we get started, I do want to remind you that if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Once you hit the subscribe button, you'll notice a little bell shows up as well. If you ring that bell, you'll be notified anytime we have new content on our YouTube channel. You can also connect with us on LinkedIn at Group Travel Odyssey, and make sure to like our Facebook page as well. Again, Group Travel Odyssey. Okay, so I can't do this by myself, or I definitely don't want to do this by myself. So let's bring on our co-host today. First, we have our lead navigator from Group Travel Odyssey, Keith Snowd. Hey, Keith.
Hey, Jim. How are you?
I'm good. So I was talking about different times and stuff like that. And you are the earliest, I think, right now, because you are in Las Vegas. And so what is it, 7 o'clock?
It's 7 o'clock. And this is actually my second appointment of the day. So let's hope that in this case, that everything that happens in Vegas doesn't stay in Vegas.
Exactly, right?
Yes.
So you're there for Arrival, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
How is that going?
It's been a great conference. A great event. So it'll be wrapping up this morning. So there's some sessions up until midday, and then we're kind of done for the conference. But been a really great event, really talking about a lot of the future of travel and the technologies that are out there, and had some really great sessions with the folks from Google talking about what they're doing and the new things that are coming. So all exciting stuff and really good for our industry. So, yeah.
Well, I look forward to hearing more about it once you get back.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Well, let's also bring on our other co-host today. He is the host of Destinations Beyond Expectations podcast, Stevie G. Hey, Stevie.
Guys, what's up? I think we're breaking a GTO live stream record today for most mileage between everyone on screen. So that's pretty. I mean, we are all over the world today.
Yes.
Yes, we are. All we need is somebody in Asia, and then we've kind of got it circumnavigated. So,
Yeah, exactly.
Jim, get on a plane.
Well, we say business without boundaries, and this is a perfect example of that, I guess. So,
yeah.
I know, we were talking briefly before this, and Keith, have you been to Bristol and Bath?
I have not.
You have not, but you're going to be going soon. That's
in 2 weeks. Yes.
In 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And Stevie, you've not been to England at all, have you?
I've never been to England. No, not yet.
Okay,
Wow.
I think that's another place for our next company retreat. So,
Wow. Okay.
We'll go overseas.
We're going to be having company retreats about every 2 weeks.
I know, right? Well, we find out such great information about these places, and then we end up adding them to our bucket lists or our travel list. And so, I think I've got vacations now planned out for the next 15 years. So,
yeah, I agree.
So. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Let's bring on our guest today. Our guest is the head of marketing with Visit West, and he's going to give us all the information that we need and that we want about Bristol and Bath. So let's welcome Jon Chamberlain. Jon, welcome.
Hey.
We're really happy to have you here with us today. And as we were saying, this is probably the longest distance between all of us that we have. Keith is usually in Florida. He's in Las Vegas. Stevie is in Florida. I'm in New York City. You're over in England, so we are definitely hitting a lot of different areas today. One of the things I want to find out is, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers will as well, where are Bristol and Bath located in England?
Okay, so it's a often asked question, and you're absolutely forgiven for not knowing.
Thank you.
Who would? But Bath and Bristol are directly west of London. So if you are talking about the train timings, then Bristol is an hour and 20 minutes. An hour and 40 minutes away from London, directly west. If you go another hour to the west, then you hit Cardiff. And there an hour north is Birmingham, and just over an hour south is Exeter. So we're just in the west of England, and really very close to the Welsh border.
Okay, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. What is the easiest way for people to get there, to get to your location?
Well, if you are in England already, then the easiest way is the train. There's a fantastic rail network within the UK. If you're coming from the States, then my top tip is to fly via Dublin with Aer Lingus, because then you can fly directly into Bristol Airport. A little tidbit is that Aer Lingus's first ever flight was from Dublin to Bristol. You've got a bit of heritage even there going on that trip. I did the opposite route in September for a Visit Britain event where I went out to Washington and flew via Dublin. You pre-clear customs in Dublin, so it's just like an internal flight when you arrive in the States, back in the States. But coming across to the UK, then you save yourself probably half a day of your holiday by coming into Bristol Airport that way, rather than going through Heathrow, perhaps. Although, granted, I get that most people will come via the Heathrow route, particularly from New York, for example, is probably going to be the most used option. But from Heathrow Express up to Paddington takes 15-20 minutes. Step over the platform to the train to Bath or Bristol, and so you can be in destination once you've left Heathrow within 2 hours, and so it's really accessible. Motorway routes, we're on the M4 and M5 junctions, so nice and easy by road as well if you're in the UK.
Excellent.
That's an interesting tidbit about coming through Dublin. That's never would have thought that. That's actually a really interesting insider tip.
Yeah, and Aer Lingus have lots of flights across the States into Dublin as well, so it makes it nice and easy for anyone coming through, and they work with the trade, so it's really a good option. And particularly if you want to combine with a dual centre holiday in Ireland and then coming across to England, perhaps if you've already been to England and you've been to London a couple of times already, and you don't need to go through London again, it's another option. Bristol Airport is one that has 9 million passengers a year, so it's big enough for lots of routes from across Europe, but also small enough that you can be landing on the runway and then through customs and into the city centre within an hour. It's a really good option.
That's great.
That's fantastic.
That's great. Wow.
So, John, one of the things I was reading about as we were kind of preparing for this live stream was Aerospace Bristol, which is an award-winning attraction, particularly for groups outside of London. What can you tell me about that attraction, or maybe some other attractions nearby that are great for groups?
Well, Aerospace Bristol, let's start with that one. It's called Aerospace, but it has the USP is the last Concorde ever to fly. 2023 will be the 20th anniversary of that last flight, and you can go and step aboard that last Concorde Alpha Foxtrot. It has its own hangar, but the beauty of this is that hangar was purpose-built for that plane. The plane had sat across the other side of what was the runway in Filton in Bristol for many years, and a few years ago, 5 years ago, they brought it across that runway, put it in its new hangar, and showcased it really. But also next door to that, this tells the story of flight in the UK. It was a guy called George White who owned a tram company in Bristol, and he saw the Wright brothers and was inspired by that. And so, not quite overnight, but pretty much stopped building trams and started building planes. And then from there, fast forward many years, and you get Concorde. Concorde was built as a British-French dual project, and the most of the British bit was in Bristol. So I mentioned the runway previously. That's now being made into a housing estate, but that runway was where Concorde tested out of in the UK. So you are at the exact point where the heritage of Concorde is in the UK. And I've been on board that, and I was lucky enough at one point to sit in the pilot seat. You can't do that anymore, I'm afraid, but I will happily send you a picture of me in a tuxedo in the pilot seat if you wish.
Brilliant.
That's great. So, we deal with a lot of different tour operators. A lot of our members are kind of, they span the gamut of different types of group travel. But we do have a lot of student tour operators. Can you talk a little bit about the offerings in Bristol and in your area with students, and particularly if a performing group was interested in coming, like a school choir or a band or something?
Yeah, we get that quite often, actually. Performance groups or even sports groups as well, that we've hooked up with local sports clubs. So in terms of students, then, we have a huge student population, 4 universities across the 2 cities. And within that, so therefore there is a lot to do. The top tip, I think, for Bristol would be to embrace the street art culture here. And Banksy, the world's most famous street artist, is from Bristol. So there is a lot of historic Banksy pieces, 25 years old. And he usually comes back to the area roughly every 2 years. So we're looking, there may well be something coming up soon, hopefully, in the area. But certainly in Bath as well, there are lots of things for students to do. The sport is a big one. Bath rugby is world famous, but in addition to that as well, then just the local culture, the local nightlife. In Bath, for example, the Jane Austen culture that is there. Jane Austen spent some time in Bath, but now is synonymous with the city, and there's any number of things to do on an Austen-themed tour. And I might upset some Austen enthusiasts a little bit by then linking perhaps a dotted line to Bridgerton. Bridgerton, the most watched series when we were all locked down in early 2020. Then from there, all of series 1 was filmed in Bath, and a lot of the buildings are recreated for the following series. So you can go and see those buildings that featured in the Bridgerton series, including one which we'll talk through on the itinerary later on. But a huge number of things to do in and around the area. And because of the geography of the area, lots of things just on our doorstep as well. So
it's funny that you mentioned Bridgerton, because I just found out about the Bridgerton experience that you can buy on Fever, which is a website, yesterday. So, and you can have it, this Bridgerton experience, and they do it in several different cities. But it's funny you mentioned that, like 2 days in a row I hear about Bridgerton.
Fantastic.
So
sorry, Jim, go ahead.
I was going to say, we discussed briefly before we came on about history and architecture and stuff too, and give us a little more information about that, because going through some of the footage and stuff that we've seen, the architecture is stunning and the history is, centuries old. So give us a little more info on that.
Well, there have been villages, towns turned into cities in the area for many thousands of years. Let's start with Bath. Let's start with the thing that's synonymous with Bath, really, the Romans and the Roman baths, and they're all still there. What you might see later on the itinerary on a photograph is predominantly Georgian. So we're coming forwards in time quite a little bit, but on the lower levels, it's all Roman architecture. You can see how they developed things, and then from there, Bath is the whole city centre is either Georgian or in the Georgian style, which makes it why part of the reason why Bath has a World Heritage Site denomination for it. So and then moving across to Bristol, again a lot of Georgian architecture, but perhaps a little bit more spread out and around. The Royal the crescent in Clifton in Bristol is reported to be the longest single crescent in the country. And there's from the Clifton Suspension Bridge through to somewhere like Bristol Cathedral that has stones in there that they can date back to possibly over 1,000 years old. So, but again, some of it is not perhaps what you might expect. So some of the facades perhaps are in a traditional style, but may have a modern building behind it, because Bristol was quite heavily bombed in the Second World War, and lots of different rebuilding happened. Lots of new architectural styles at the time as well, perhaps some of which are being renewed, perhaps now in a more traditional style.
So
Great.
Jon, you had mentioned earlier about several different UNESCO designations that your area has. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more for us?
Yeah, so I'd mentioned Bath already. Is the whole city is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's very unusual for a whole city to be so. Then Bath also has a second designation, which is part of the European Historic Thermal Towns World Heritage. But then moving across to Bristol, then we have a UNESCO Creative Cities designation. We're a city of film. Part of that is because lots of things are filmed here. We have huge film studios here. Unfortunately, you can't tour them at the moment, but maybe come back to me in a few years' time about that one. But then lots of things, like I say, filmed in the city, produced in the city, and just that whole heritage, all the way through from someone called William Freeze Green, look it up, all the way through now to Stephen Merchant last year, and perhaps you may have seen it on PBS in the States, The Outlaws, which is a fantastic program. Christopher Walken, Academy Award winner, in a comedy thriller set in Bristol. It was just beautiful to see him on a bus going through a council estate in Bristol as part of that show. So there's huge numbers of things, and Bristol is often used as the backdrop for other cities such as London. So you'll see different locations in Bristol. And then going back to Bath, things that have been filmed, their Persuasion earlier this year that came out. And then a new one which should be out around Christmas is the new Wonka film, which was partially filmed in Bath as well. So that was causing a lot of stir when they were filming that back in the summer.
Great.
Jon, as a big sports fan, I love, of course, American football, but I'm also a big fan of what the rest of the world calls football as well. And so I have to ask you about Bristol Rovers FC, and talk to me about that experience, what going to a game is like, and maybe other sporting events that groups can attend while they're visiting your area.
Certainly. So, obviously, you mentioned football. What we would class as football, obviously, you class as soccer. Bristol has two teams: Bristol Rovers in the north and the east of the city, and Bristol City are predominantly south of the city in terms of fan base, and they are in what are effectively the second and third tier of the football league in the UK. We have 90 teams across 4 tiers, and they're in the second and third tiers. So it's a fantastic day out. It involves meeting up early, grabbing some lunch, perhaps in a pub or a takeaway, a chip shop, something like that, and then having a couple of drinks and going to the game, singing the songs with the crowd, and hoping that your team wins. There is another one as well. In Bath have a semi-professional football team. They are down in the 6th tier, so not full-time professionals, but gives a different experience of football in the UK. And then I guess going more towards the American football style, we have rugby. Rugby is huge in the West Country where we are. Bath and Bristol both have big teams in the Premiership of rugby. So that's the top 12 teams in the country. And both have international players within those sides as well. And that really is a fantastic day out. Lots of camaraderie. All of the fans, the different teams are all in together. And it's all about having a great time, watching some rugby, having a few beers, and just being all together as well. But I should also mention during the summer months, we have Gloucestershire Cricket. And they play in the north of Bristol. There's a little geography thing, which is Bristol is its own city and county. To the north is Gloucestershire, and the counties of cricket, one of which is Gloucestershire, but they play in Bristol, and so there are county games throughout the summer months, and international games come to the ground in Bristol as well. So that's can be a longer day, or it can be an evening, but it's a great excuse to kick back, relax, and watch a different sport that perhaps you wouldn't see so much in the States.
Very cool.
Fantastic. Great. We're going to continue the conversation. There's a lot more for us to talk about, and we're also going to go through an itinerary and stuff. But first, let's have a word about some of our partners. Stevie?
Group Travel Odyssey would like to take a moment to thank our amazing partners, including Book My Group, Travel Advocates, We Travel, Broadway Inbound, and Fly My Group. These partnerships help make business without boundaries possible, and we encourage our viewers to learn more about these wonderful companies. Now, back to Destination Dispatch.
Thank you, Stevie. Well, now what I'm going to do is let's turn this over to Keith and John, and you can walk us through this wonderful sample itinerary that we have. Take it away, gentlemen.
Great. Thanks, Jim. I want to remind all of our viewers that if you are a member of Group Travel Odyssey, you can actually access this information in two places in the GTO system. You can go to the Supplier Manager app and look up John's listing, and this itinerary will be attached there, and you'll be able to see everything. But even better, you can go to the Sales Manager app and search for Bath or Bristol, either one. This itinerary will come up, and you can actually copy it right into a brand new itinerary that you're going to sell to one of your clients and send them on their way. So make sure you use those resources. And I'm going to stop talking, and John, let you kind of walk us through this itinerary and tell us a little bit more about Bath and Bristol.
Fantastic. Thank you, Keith. So as we discussed, the best way will be to arrive into Bristol Airport. And if you do that, the likelihood is you've probably flown overnight from the States into Dublin. So you'll be in Bristol early morning. So what you'll need is a bit of a leg stretch and then some fresh air. So take a walk along the harbour side. You can see a photograph there of the very famous colourful houses alongside the harbour. And perhaps you want to take a harbour cruise as well. Bristol Packet boat trips offer a number of different sized boats, perfect for any group size. And they will do a 45-minute to an hour tour around Bristol's harbour, giving you a great overview of the city. And then some refreshments on board, if you like.
And John, I would say that there's probably a lot of people that don't realize that iconic photo that you have there of the colored houses and things is from Bristol. A lot of people, I think, kind of, you see that in a lot of travel places, and it's that view is something that I've seen a lot, and I bet you there's a lot of people that are like, oh my gosh, now I know where that's from.
There are a few places that do it, but I can't think of anyone anywhere near us that does. And there's some history behind it. There's some other colourful houses on a different hill called Totterdown, which is just the other side of the harbour. And that was very close to where they used to make lots of paint at a paint factory.
Oh.
And so the story goes, don't hold me to it, but the story goes that whenever they produced a different colour, they would paint one of the houses on the hill to demonstrate that colour to the local populace. And everyone eventually just went, that looks quite nice. So now it's continued on the tradition, and particularly the area you see there is Clifton Wood, and certainly all the houses are different colours there. If you decided to paint your house white, I think the neighbours would come knocking.
That's great. So,
but after we've been around the harbour, let's go to what is on TripAdvisor the number one attraction in Bristol, which is the SS Great Britain, that ship you see there on the right. That ship came back there 52 years ago, 1970. However, it was built exactly where it sits now in the 1840s. It was built by an engineer called Isambard Kingdom Brunel, who you may or may not have heard of, but he was a Victorian engineer who created lots of things in the country, not least the Great Western Railway from London to Bristol, and then this ship, the SS Great Britain. It was the first iron-hulled ship in the world. It was the very first ship with a screw propeller in the world. And when it was built, it was the longest ship in the world. When it was launched, tens of thousands of Bristolians came out and lined the harbour side around, predominantly to watch it sink, because it was made of iron and everyone thought it was going to sink. It did not. It floated. And then eventually when it left the harbour, it then actually was too big to work from Bristol as the port. So it worked out of Southampton and Liverpool mainly, but travelled around the world more than 32 times in its history. Wow. However, its initial purpose was to guarantee a sail time between UK and New York of 14 days. So what this is the Nokia phone of its day. It completely changed the game, but was then very quickly outdated, which is why it then went around the world, took lots of people to Australia, emigrating out to Australia, and now it's completely restored. So you can go inside, you can even go under what looks like water there. You can go under there and see the rusty hull underneath. You can go inside the ship and see it in various different parts of its lifetime. And you can even, if you're feeling brave, go and climb the rigging and out on the yard arm, which are those horizontal bars there. And that point, you're 16 meters above the ground level. So it's pretty high up. The idea is that you're like a Victorian sailor, but I'm not sure the Victorians were quite as well strapped on as you would be with you and your groups.
Right.
Absolutely.
What they can do as well there is have lunch. You can have lunch on board the ship, or there are cafes next door that they can provide for groups there, really good packages. And from there, what we suggest, you may have your own coach, but if not, use the Toot bus, which is the open top bus tour of the area, and go up to Clifton. And there you see on the left, the Clifton Suspension Bridge. This is another design by Brunel. Unfortunately, he died before it was built, but synonymous with Bristol. And this picture we use all the time, but it always looks like it's in the middle of the countryside. It's really not. It's right on the edge of the city. And you see there the River Avon below there. That's the Avon Gorge coming into the city. The city used to be one of the busiest ports in the country, and yet it's 10 miles from the sea. So this river was really highly used until boats got too big, really, to come into the port. The port of Bristol now is where it should be, out by the sea, by the Bristol Channel there. But you can have private tours of the bridge itself, learn all about the history, and you'll see there on the right-hand side the tower, which is within the woods there. It was discovered a few years ago that actually there were vaults within that tower. The plans were get lost at some stage, so nobody knew about them for many years. This bridge is 160 years old, so you can now go inside the vaults with smaller group tours as well, which is something to really tell the people at home, because not many people have done that.
Wow, that's a unique find. That's really great. Let me move on down here. Sorry.
So moving on, we've talked a little bit about Aerospace Bristol. You'll see the plane there. What that shows as well is that if, like me, every time you get on a plane and it takes off, you go, how on earth does this actually go up and stay up? So what it does is it projects onto the side of the plane how it works, what the physics are, and you go away from there going, well, that's simple. I fully understand flight now, and then 10 minutes later you'll forget it all. But it's an absolutely fantastic day out, half a day out there, and like I say, 2023 is the 20th anniversary of the last flight, so they've got lots of special things going on throughout the year.
Great.
Then later on in the evening, there are huge numbers of restaurants that are group-friendly dining, and certainly if anyone gets in touch with me, I can make suggestions for them. But what we suggest is maybe go out to a pub, enjoy the atmosphere, or go and see a show. And the Bristol Hippodrome has lots of touring West End theatre productions, so things currently at the moment is Disney's Beauty and the Beast. Lots of the things that you'll see in the West End in London tour through Bristol as well. So, you don't have to necessarily go to the West End in London. You can see a show in Bristol, all very bookable well in advance. The other option as well is the Bristol Old Vic Theatre. This was built in 1766. It's the oldest continually working theatre in the English-speaking world. Going to see a show here is an amazing experience. It's really, you are so close to the action. You can see on the photo here, seats above the stage. But if you're not lucky enough to be there for a show, they do behind-the-scene tours as well. And there is options for group dining in the foyer as well. So it's a really good atmosphere there. And the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School has an amazing record of training actors. It's like the who's who of British acting talent that's gone through there. People like Judi Dench have gone through there. But probably the top one is Daniel Day-Lewis, winner of 4 Best Actor Oscars. So he trained there. And so you can go and see where he trained, and all of the heritage that is there is just for theatre buffs, and it's a must see.
So, John, before we move on to the next day, one of the questions I want to ask you is about lodging options for groups in Bristol and Bath. Could you, since we're kind of at the end of a day and we would be heading to lodging, could you talk a little bit about some of the options that are available in your area?
Yeah, so we've got, take Bristol, for example. We have over 6,000 hotel rooms in the city, and something for every budget that you're looking at. And there are group options through that. So if we're talking about student groups, we've got a fantastic youth hostel right on the harbour. In fact, probably shouldn't say it, but it might be the best location of any property in the city. Then all the way through, we have the branded hotels. So if you are keen on keeping your Hilton Honors or your Marriott points, then we have those available. But we also have some either small chains or independent hotels are perfect as well. So, depending on the groups, we can help with that. So if people get in touch, we can suggest a number of different places that could be suitable. And then, the really high end, if you're looking for 5-star luxury, things like the Gainsborough Bath Spa or the Royal Crescent Hotel in Bath really do set themselves apart in terms of the quality and the service they get there. But a huge number of very good 3-4-star equivalent properties across the 2 cities. There's never really an issue finding something that will suit both the size of the group and the budget.
And most of the hotels, not hostels, but most of the hotels in your area have really great options for like bed and breakfast or dining options at the hotel, right? That's a pretty standard offering at most hotels anymore, right?
Yeah, so a standard offer everywhere really is bed and breakfast. So you'll get that. And then if you are looking at groups, and particularly if you're staying for multiple nights, dinner, bed and breakfast, and perhaps if you stay for 3 nights, you may want to do dinner, bed and breakfast for 2 or 3 of those, and have a free evening to go out as well. That's always a good option. And but all of the hotels have certainly the bigger chain hotels as well have those dinner, bed and breakfast packages that are available either directly or through a DMC.
Great, perfect. So day 2, let's jump in.
So day 2, it's all about the art today, and street art in Bristol. Banksy, as I mentioned, is the most famous street artist in the world. There are a lot of street art tours and experiences you can do, either guided or self-guided around Bristol. And some of them even will have an experience at the end. So you can spray your own canvas and take it home, and it's completely up to you if you want to convince your friends it's an original Banksy or not. I'll leave that down to you.
I can guarantee what I would create is not going to be an original.
They will give you a various different stencils, and you can just spray it and see how you get on. But also other immersive experience for smaller groups. For example, you can go into what used to be the old police station in Bristol. It's now an art centre. You can go downstairs into the cellars there where they used to arrest people for spraying on the walls, and it took them down to these cells for overnight. You can go in those cells and spray the wall as part of an experience there. So really immersive and lots of options there. But then, Bristol is the best street art city in Europe. The only one that gets anywhere near, I think, is Berlin, and then maybe London after that. But certainly Bristol is right up there. It takes a lot of inspiration from New York from the 1980s as well. And then after you've done a bit of street art walking, let's go and visit a couple of galleries. So you'll see there on the screen is the Royal West of England Academy, the only Royal Academy outside London. And then just down the road is Bristol Museum and Art Gallery. And let's loop it back. There's a Banksy in there as well. When he took over the museum in 2009 for an exhibition, then he left a sculpture piece in there. It's a beautiful concrete angel with a paint can upturned on her head. So you can go and see that in there. And potentially Spike Island, which is just around the harbour as well, for lots of modern art. There are artist studios there you can go and visit as well. But then let's go on to the afternoon and you start the journey across to Bath. So Arnolfini, which is on the harbour side as well, has lots of touring exhibitions that go in there. And if you're into photography, then in one little place called Arnos Vale, we have both the Martin Parr Foundation, and Martin Parr is a very famous British photographer, and the Royal Photographic Society. They're actually, by chance, located about that far from each other. So that was to scale on your screens, and they are right next door to each other. If you're into photography, that really is somewhere to go. Or in the same area, we actually have Bristol Blue Glass. Bristol is famous for its blue glass, which years ago was actually a tax exemption scheme. So that you may have heard of the window tax in the UK that was there many hundreds of years ago. Well, there was a tax on clear glass for windows and a tax on brown and green glass because that's what the booze came in. And so someone in Bristol decided to make blue glass because there was no tax on that. And so that's where Bristol Blue Glass comes from. But just over the road from there, where you can see the glass being made, is Arnsvale Cemetery, which is a Victorian cemetery right in the city. But it was left alone for 40 years. So if you imagine what a cemetery would look like if just nature was allowed to take over a long period of time, that's what it's like now. So you can go in there. There's several acres right in the heart of the city, but it feels like being in the middle of a country, maybe in a part of a movie, and it's the who's who of Victorian culture in Bristol are buried in there. So it's a fantastic afternoon out.
That's great. I love that your days are sort of themed around different ideas. This day being about art. I just attended the session yesterday about planning an itinerary and kind of telling a story. And there's so much story to be told here just in the art day. Like it's really fascinating. But
let's move on to Bath, and so many ways of getting there. If you've got a coach, then it'd take about 30-40 minutes to get from city to city. But the best way is by train because it takes 12 minutes. If anyone's ever been to London, that's a lot quicker than getting even from Leicester Square to Paddington. It's what I tell people. It's the equivalent of 4 tube stops, and so suddenly everything is very close by. Or the other way of doing it, if you've got an active group, is cycle between the two. The first off-road cycle path in the whole country was between Bath and Bristol. It follows an old railway line, so it's pretty flat. The topography of the local area is hilly, but this is a pretty flat ride. It will take about 2 hours to cycle it if you don't stop. But there are some very good pubs I can recommend on the way. So if you do have a little bit longer, then I can heartily recommend a half or a full day cycle through there. But arrive in Bath for dinner. You'll see here is the inside of a place called Sally Lunn's. Sally Lunn buns are very famous in Bath. There are 2 buns in Bath. There's the Sally Lunn bun and the Bath bun. They are slightly different from each other. But this is an option of something very local to go along and taste and try for dinner. And they have a full menu there, and it's lots of nooks and crannies, but great for some groups that can all spread out around the building.
Great.
So the following morning, I would encourage you to have a big, hearty, full English breakfast. Make full use of the breakfast buffet at the hotel because we're going to push on through until the afternoon. We've got a full-on morning. We're going to start off with going to the Roman Baths. No trip to Bath would be complete without going to the Roman Baths, as you see there. Over 1 million litres of 46-degree water is coming through into that bath every day. My most fantastic fact about those litres of water that go through there is that they all fell as rainwater somewhere in England 10,000 years ago. So that water that came through today fell as rain 10,000 years ago. So that's your fact for the day. But what we can do for 2023 as a new product on the market is a pre-opening tour. I think they're going to badge it as a sunrise tour. Not quite at sunrise, but you will be able to have a group tour around the Roman Baths before the doors open to the general public at 10 o'clock. And the top tip here, if you are coming to Bath, specifically you are staying, then there are quite a large number of coach trips that come out of London every day and go on a preset circuit, of one of which, the end loop of that circuit, is the Roman Baths and Bath. So just after lunch, 1 till 3 is the peak time at the Roman Bath. So if you can avoid that, you have a different experience, and an even better experience if it's just your group in the Roman Baths. You're not elbowing anyone else out of the way. So.
Great. That's fantastic.
And then moving on, a little bit more art is some classic art. They're here at the Holborn Museum. And we talked about Bridgerton before. This is Lady Danbury's mansion in Bristol.
Okay.
So I can see Jim now is like, yes, I'm not with that. And Tim, just for you, there is a selfie frame just outside, which will perfectly in that Bridgerton scene. And they're still using that the exact building for the filming of the subsequent series. So that's really, really good there. And Bath really is full of this beautiful Georgian architecture. You see there on the right is Pontney Bridge. It's a Palladian bridge, which means that you can walk across it. It's got a road and there are shops each side. It's one of the last remaining bridges of its kind in the country. Just a fantastic route to walk through and classic photos of the bridge there. Just the other side of the bridge is the Victoria Art Gallery collection. It's the local collection of some really fine art going on in there, with touring exhibitions as well. And then I don't have a photo on here, but of the Royal Crescent in Bath, which is used in every picture. If you go on the Visit Bath website there, it will almost always be on the homepage. At the end of the Royal Crescent, number 1 is a museum which tells you all about family life in Georgian Bath. If you're going to continue that story, the Jane Austen Centre pictured here gives a very warm welcome and tells you everything about Jane Austen, everything you could ever want to know about Jane Austen. They've even got a cafe there where you can take tea like she would as well. But if you want to keep it on a literary theme, Mary Shelley's House of Frankenstein is just a couple of doors away from here as well. So if you do have a group, a size, perhaps you could split. You could go half to Mary Shelley's House of Frankenstein, half to the Jane Austen Centre, and then swap. I'm doing exactly the same thing on our fam trip in a few weeks' time. Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein, the world's first science fiction novel, published in 1816. And I can tell you, apologies, Americans, but what Hollywood told you about Frankenstein is not what Mary Shelley wrote. So go and discover what she wrote, what Frankenstein's monster really looked like, and it's a fantastic immersive experience there. But by this point, you'll be hungry. So we need to go and have afternoon tea. You can't come to the UK without having afternoon tea. And sorry to burst any myths, but we do not have it every day. The reason for that is that the Georgians must have been massive because the afternoon tea really is very filling. It never looks too filling, but it is really filling. One of the best places to have it would be here in the pump rooms, which is right next door to the Roman Baths. And in there, they've got a water fountain in there where you can actually taste the thermal water that comes through. It's very, shall we say, nutrient heavy. So it's not for everyone's tastes, but it does come through warm, and it's definitely something to try. But if you've got maybe teenagers or something like that, film them tasting the water, because that would be a great thing to do.
Video will go viral. Yes.
Absolutely. Yes. And we'll get one of you, Keith, if you come in a couple of weeks' time.
Okay. There we go.
And then finally, because we've had afternoon tea, suddenly we've got the early evening to ourselves. So how about going and seeing, experiencing Evensong in Bath Abbey? It will, even if you're not religious, it will make the hairs on the back of your neck tingle like you wouldn't believe. And then there's all sorts of other nightlife options in Bristol. Go and see a show at the Theatre Royal, some comedy or music at Comedia. And if you like those old style traditional English pubs with a pint of ale or a pint of cider, which is more local, then go and find those in the side streets in Bath, because they are the places to go.
And then we're going to end with my favorite thing, which is a map. And I love a good map. And this one's a good map. Really gives you a good idea of where everything is that we've just been talking about. So anything you want to add here?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say if you've got more time, and that's one of the trends we've been seeing over the last few years. I think gone are the days of Europe in 3 days, and perhaps people want to slow down a little bit more and looking for a hub and spoke destination. This is something that's happened in London for a number of years, that people base themselves in London and go on lots of day trips. Well, let's flip that on the head and stay in Bath or Bristol. And you can see on here that there are lots of things very close by. And how we pitch it now is the England you already know, but better. So we talked about the Roma Baths and the early morning tour instead of all the coach tours from London arriving at the same time. You can have an early morning tour of the Cotswolds. There's no one there in the mornings. Go and see Tetbury in the Cotswolds. It's where the king used to live now. And then if you are 90 minutes away to the southeast is Stonehenge. An hour away to the west is Cardiff. You've got Cheddar, Wells and Glastonbury to the south, as well as the coastline there. Cheddar, incidentally, you've heard of cheddar cheese. This is where cheddar cheese comes from. So you haven't tasted cheddar cheese until you've gone and had a piece of cheese that's aged in a cave in Cheddar Gorge. And you can see on there as well Bristol Airport, which is very close to the city. 20 minutes into Bristol or 45 minutes across to Bath. There are regular shuttle buses that are running all the time through there. And one cheeky comparison I often use for Bath and Bristol together really is because it's a royal year, it's a royal themed year. Let's not dwell on September, but think back to the Jubilee and think forward to the coronation next year. I liken Bath and Bristol as the two princes, William and Harry. So Bath is William, perhaps the older sibling, absolutely born to do what it does, looks fantastic, very much you get what you're given on that, and he will not let you down. Whereas you go to Bristol, the younger sibling likes to have a lot of fun, draws its own path, and has fantastic links with America as well. So lots of things there, and let's put it out now that I apologize profusely to the royal family for making that comparison.
But it is a brilliant description. It really is.
It really is. I mean, it really kind of puts it in perspective for you, especially for the U.S. population here. So that's great. Well, Jon, thank you so much. Really going through this itinerary, it really gives you a good sense of how much you can do with the group in this wonderful area. It's just fantastic. So thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Jim.
And Jon, if people want even more information, how can they reach out to you?
So go to visitwest.co.uk/trade, and the contact details are on there. You can hopefully find me on LinkedIn with Jon Chamberlain on there, Jon, and just go to the Visit West site, find me on there, and I'm here to help, really. So if you need images, photograph, video, you need sense checking itineraries, you want any information about things that are going on in the years to come in the cities, or want to come a part of a fam trip as well, then let us know, and we're here to help.
Jon, thank you so much once again for joining us today and for all the fantastic information. I know Keith's taking lots of notes because he'll be there in a couple weeks, so you'll probably see him. So Jon, thanks once again for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
But don't forget, Destination Dispatch does happen on Thursdays, usually at 2 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern time. But again, this was a special occasion, and so we are meeting earlier today. All of our Destination Dispatch episodes are on our social media channels. So if you go to our YouTube page, you can go and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you will be able to find all of the previous episodes of Destination Dispatch. You can also find our GTO Coach and Go, which is our coaching session that we do every other week on Tuesdays at 2 o'clock Eastern time. And we bring on the experts from our own team to give you some more information about GTO and what we can do to help make your day-to-day more efficient by using the GTO system. Keith, if they want to reach out and get in touch with us, how can they do so?
Super easy. Go to grouptravelodyssey.com, or you can email any of us, Stephen, Jim, myself, Jim at gtonetwork.com, Keith at gtonetwork.com. Any of us will be happy to help you and get you more information about what we can do to help your business without boundaries.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And Stevie G, give us a little more information about Destinations Beyond Expectations podcast.
Sure. Destinations Beyond Expectations is, of course, the podcast designed for students of travel. I host it. We have new episodes that go live every Friday. Tomorrow, if you're actually looking at the world map, we're not going too far from Bristol and Bath. We're heading over a couple countries, or I guess I don't know my geography that well, but I'll have to study it. But we're going to Scotland. I think that's a couple countries, right? It's a good episode if you're wanting to visit Scotland for the first time. Things to know about visiting the country, what it's like throughout the different seasons, some of the major attractions and cities to check out over there. So you can listen to that episode on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. Or, of course, you can visit the website dbetravel.com.
John just corrected you to say it's one country directly north.
I was like one or two. I don't know. I appreciate it.
Brilliant. Well, Keith, have safe travels, because I know you're going to be traveling in the next day or so. Yes. And gentlemen, as always, it's been fantastic spending actually the morning with you this time. And for everybody else, thank you for joining us today. We hope to see you again on an episode very, very soon. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching this episode of Destination Dispatch. We invite you to stay connected with Group Travel Odyssey on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And be sure to check out more of our media, including GTO Coach and Go and the Destinations Beyond Expectations podcast. Please visit our website, grouptravelodyssey.com, where you can learn more about GTO and request a demo. Group Travel Odyssey, business without boundaries.